What did the failures of early ERP deployments teach you about how not to automate?
Some of the earliest automation apps really weren't automation apps. It was literally an application in which it would then record a macro, and then the macro would then click the buttons for you. But if you didn't know which buttons to click, or you didn't know the right order to click them in, it didn't necessarily help you with that. You actually have to map out what cases, what are you going to do, and how is that technology going to work?
In the fast-evolving world of technology and AI, one leader has spent over 2 decades shaping the future. Art Pugach is the Chief Technology Officer at Q Associates, Microsoft MVP for M365 Copilot, and a driving force behind innovation, strategy, and the transformative power of AI.
My biggest concern when it comes to automation, it feels almost as though AI in a certain sense has been oversold. And the idea where it's saying AI can do anything out of the box, and it can't.
What's the one question you're not getting asked enough?
Always remember, work the problem. Don't let it work you. Don't try to place blame for an issue first. Fix the issue first. Do the autopsy after.
Is advising a client to go all in on a single vendor a competitive advantage, or do you see it a security and resilience risk that doesn't get talked about enough? Welcome to Automate or Die Trying, the show where moving fast and staying secure isn't a contradiction. It's a job. I'm your host, Will Ramos. Today's guest has spent 27 years as CTO of one of the most respected Microsoft consulting firms of the planet, Q Associates. He just earned the Microsoft MVP designation for his work with M365 Copilot, an award given to fewer than 4,000 people globally. And he's been shipping enterprise ERP, AI, and automation solutions before most of us in our audience had their first tech job. Art Pugach, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Will. It's nice to be on.
Did I mess that up, the last name, or just
Name's
the folks in
Pugach.
Pugach? Okay, perfect. So, Art, for those folks who don't know Q Associates, give them the 30-second version. What do you actually do, and what's the scale you operate at?
So Q Associates is a Microsoft Dynamics partner, or as they now call them, solution providers. And we've been in business for well over 30 years. I've been with Q for, going to be going on 28 years this September. And we are a Microsoft Dynamics ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning, CE, Customer Engagement partner. We deal with the full Dynamics range of products, whether it's the legacy ones, which are SL, which used to be Solomon, or GP, which used to be Great Plains, or BC, which is Dynamics 365 Business Central, or Dynamics 365 ERP/finance/product operations, a bunch of different acronyms for it. There's also CE, which is a CRM product, which I've been working with since it was version 1.0 back in the early 2000s. So we're very familiar with the Microsoft Dynamics stack. In addition, we were we could say an early adopter of cloud services as well. We virtualized our offices back during the Great Recession, or during the big real estate downturn back in the late aughts. So we've have a lot of experience with the cloud space when it comes to Dynamics, when it comes to Azure, when it comes to the Microsoft stack for that. And now at the moment, we have moved into the area of Copilot, and the area of AI, which is what we've been looking at and pushing towards more and more. And we're introducing our customers to agents and letting them know that AI isn't nearly as scary as they may think. At the same time, I'll just give a quick shout out and advertisement to my podcast, When in Doubt Reboot. That is on my hat. We talk about demystifying tech, and specifically in our later broadcasts about AI and Copilot. And we've done over 50 of those throughout the last few years. So it's and we'll continue to do more as time permits.
Awesome. So you've been inside this one firm, like you mentioned, almost 20 years now. That's really almost unheard of, in tech. What's kept you there, right?
Well, I'll be honest.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll be honest with you. What's kept me here is very simple: is the diversity of clients. And first of all, I like the people I work with. Secondly, I think it speaks very very loudly to the quality of the people I work with and the quality of the company, that I'm not the only person who's been with the company for 20 plus years. We have several people that have been.
Yeah.
We enjoy working with each other. We make a really good team. So that's one thing. The other thing I can say is, as an IT person, I love solving problems. I love troubleshooting. And I'd
Yeah.
say in this position, it has been something where I get to troubleshoot, get to look at, get to learn new things every day. And I've said to, we have several hundred clients, and they're of all different backgrounds, all different industries. As a technologist, I'm one of the few people in the company that probably gets to interact with all of them, because they all have technological questions. Some of them have limitations, some of them have development questions, but certainly they're all technological questions. So I'm typically someone that gets to meet both the people on the finance side, or on the creative side, or on the technology side, or development side. So I get to work with a huge diverse group of people, and I very much have always enjoyed that and appreciated that. So that's been a very big thing about that. The one big, I would say, almost hiccup was when we did switch to the cloud. It was sort of getting that whole sort of adjustment of not going to an office. But certainly
Right.
that put us in a good space for when the pandemic occurred, because we were able to help any of our customers make those shifts either to a hybrid or to a fully cloud solution. But one of the things where you realize when you don't have the commute, and sometimes the commute could be rough, you have more hours in the day that you can dedicate to your work, dedicate to solving problems, and you're not getting worn out from the commute, which is good. But the one thing I've always said to people, if you are going to if you are going to remote work, make sure you have a dedicated office. So that say it's very important to have a room where you're in while you work, and a room so you can exit that room and put away work at the end of the day, and get back to your personal life. Otherwise, it can be very tempting to stay in that work office, almost too long, I could say. But certainly, it's not a bad thing. And one of the great things over the last few years is, because of cloud products, and because of the push for everything in the cloud, we've expanded from an area where we used to start just the New York metropolitan area to a global, to be a global, I think was at 15 or 16, and we're opening up a couple more offices worldwide. So we're now a global, we now have a global presence, and can want to continue to grow and continue to learn new things. And that's what it comes down to. And as I've said on my
Hmm.
podcast, I've said to my people, the day that I uh, stop enjoying learning new things is the day that I'm going to retire, and I hope that never happens. So,
That's it, man. That's it. So, starting in Q, like you said, 98, that's, pre Y2K, pre mobile, pre cloud, pre everything that people take for granted now. What did the failures of early ERP deployments teach you about how not to automate?
well, a couple interesting things I'll say about technology back in the late 90s. We were one of the first companies that used Blackberries. So certainly
Mm.
I could tell you, from that point of view, that that made life, put it this way, that made life already a very quickly sort of 24/7 type thing. But as far as automation goes, I mean, the big thing, and I say this when it comes to Copilot, and when it comes to AI in general, or even back in the day, I like to start with a conversation saying, okay, well, before I was with Q Associates, I worked with a company where we were converting their product from DOS to Windows.
Okay.
And the first thing that I can tell you, and I'm seeing the same thing with AI, and I'll get to the automation question in a second, is that when you went from DOS to Windows, you had one way where you were doing something. When you moved to Windows, you could have 5 or 6 ways of doing things. And the end users were then asking, well, what's the right way? And there is no
Hmm.
right way. You do it yourself. And it's the same sort of thing with AI. They come up with a question where, what we do our workshops, what's the right way? Well, I can't tell you what the right way is. You have to experiment. You learn. And what it's taught me over time is, we seem to have this concept, or maybe human beings in general, that technology is going
Mm.
to be almost a silver bullet that's going to fix all of our problems. But the question that isn't asked, and I've seen this whether it's with an ERP or a CRM system, or any system in general, is it's never a technology question. Technology can do whatever you want it to do. It's always a people question. It's always a use question. And the big thing that seems to never happen is, and what causes a lot of implementations to fail, and this is, I've seen this at any number of places, and it doesn't necessarily have to be with my company or another company, it's just an in general statement, is when a customer says, "Okay, I'm spending $1 million on this piece of technology. Now just put it in. and it's going to work. Well, it's not how technology works. You have to discuss how you're going to use it. What solution are you actually using it to solve for? What's the use case? And that's the same thing with automation as well. You can automate from here to tomorrow. I mean, I remember used to have some of the earliest automation apps really weren't automation apps. It was literally an application in which you would have it, you would install it, it would then record a macro, and then the macro would then click the buttons for you. But if you didn't
Yep.
know which buttons to click, or you didn't know the right order to click them in, it didn't necessarily help you with that. The same sort of thing with the customization of a product. It sounds kind of silly, but something that people didn't think about was, okay, I want to hide these fields. I want to make a screen look a certain way from, to make my processing easier. And it was all about what's the order of the tab stop. Well, if you didn't know where you wanted to go first,
Right.
automation isn't going to help you. It's the same sort of thing. You actually have to map out what cases, what are you going to do, and how is that technology going to work. So when I'm showing individuals going more to the modern day, things with like Copilot Studio as an example, Copilot Studio Lite in most cases, because that's what comes with Microsoft 365. Copilot, the situation is, okay, let's not just talk about what this agent is going to do. Let's talk about how this agent is going to work for you and what specific task you need it to do. Once you can figure that out, you can then tell the agent what you want to do. You can then create the workflow. The assumption is with an agent that it's just going to do everything you want to do. No, you still have to have
Right.
some human interaction where you're going to say, okay, no, this is what I want you to do. Admittedly, they can learn, it can do this sort of thing. But as I've said to a number of people, an AI agent or, a Copilot or anything like that, they're like a human assistant, theoretically, where you have a human assistant where you can offload certain work to, an agent, you're going to offload that work to. But similar to that, if you were going to talk with a human assistant and not really give them detailed enough instructions, and then they're like going like, I don't know what to do. I'm just going to this work. And you're like,
You're
no,
gonna be
that's not what
lost.
I
Yeah.
needed. Same thing
Exactly.
with AI. I mean, the thing about it is like human beings, AI cannot read minds. We like to think maybe it can. It's very smart. So are some human beings, but we still haven't gotten the whole thing about being able to read minds. So the key thing we have to remember is that you get out of it what you put into it. And that's what goes for automation. That goes for just building a product and how you're going to use it. And frankly, that's where I see the biggest value. We think of AI, at least in the press, I hear or this whole idea of AI being something that's going to cause all these people to get fired or replace people's jobs. And that's not what I don't look at AI as being that way. I look at AI as an enhancement, something that'll give you the assistant you never were able to afford because not everybody can afford an assistant. Well, now you have an AI assistant. Not just that, but the fact that you can enhance, you can make yourself more of a profit center for your company because you can bring up more reporting, you can automate more tasks, you can make your job more efficient. AI is not going to replace you. AI is going to help you and maybe save you, an hour or more a day. Maybe enable you to do other tasks that you weren't able to get to create other reports. One of the great examples I've given, one of the products that we've worked with a bunch recently is something called Microsoft, is called Contact Center. And it's for the
Mm.
Dynamics 365 CE customer engagement product, customer service product. So with my help desk, they've been talking a long time saying, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could take all these cases that we've created over the years for all our different customers, thousands upon thousands of cases, right? Wouldn't it be cool if we could turn that into an accessible knowledge base? So that way, a
Yeah.
customer goes into an agent or, it starts typing a question, and maybe he'll get an answer where it can help the end user solve the problem, take some of the pressure off of help desk so they can, level one can be that, level two can, be the more complicated stuff, or even just sort of help someone who's new on help desk training going, oh, okay, I see how this is supposed to work, going through different steps. So they were talking about it, but it's one of those things where, well, we're an active help desk, right? We don't necessarily have the time. In the past, you'd have to hire interns or hire junior support people to go through the articles, go this to do the double checking back and forth. With Contact Center, we went ahead and we turned it on a sandbox and we went through, I think it was about 20,000 cases. Over the next 2 days, what it did is created a knowledge base. And it created a knowledge base based on all the articles, and it was extraordinarily accurate, I understand, from our help desk team. In 2 days, something that would have taken several months. And suddenly, wow, here you have this knowledge base. Now, admittedly, with any AI, any assistant, you always have to have people double check the work, read through it. So the harder part of the whole thing is say, okay, yeah, it took 2 days to create it. It might take 2 weeks to be reviewed. But again, you're talking about something where it was able to create something very accurate and very usable in a very short amount of time that would have taken months, and frankly, was something that people wanted to do, but nobody had time to do. And to me, that's sort of a power, sort of this automation as well, is that what it'll do going forward, as you enter new cases, it'll create new knowledge base information as products enhance. And that's a really cool, really, to me, really cool, really value added situation. And that's just part of contact center. Now there are other agents that we've done with as well, like for Business Central as an example. I mean, one of the big ones we show people are sales order agents, where in the past you used to have to go and or a purchase order agent where you had to go, one an email,
Yep.
okay, I need this ordered, I need this, blah, 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 blah. Well, all you have to do is send this. It goes to the agent goes ahead, creates the order, goes through the whole process for you in a matter of seconds, and then you get the option where you just have to say, okay, is this approved? Yes, boom, done. And that sort of thing. You don't have to go through a manual process of checking inventory. You don't have to go through a manual process of creating the work order. It does all that for you. And that's that sort of power of it, where again, you don't have to spend time, on that part of things as much. You could spend times on other, building the business, as we're helping out your customers, where you can have those resources over there for you. And it's the same thing with anything. It's like trying to automate, the building of a virtual machine. If you think about Azure, pretty much when you build a machine, it already is automated to a certain extent. Now you can get a bit more, you can get a little more fine, a little more options, I guess you could say. Or you can work with AI more to automate more of the process, especially if you're building out more and more things. And some really, if you think about other tools when you were building workstations, you just would clone one workstation, automation, boom, 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 template, bang, bang, bang. And I see more and more people do that with VDIs over the last few years as well, because at this point, people are saying, okay, let's just, give people a blank laptop. Well, then have them, log into a VDI on it. And that way the VDI will take care of it. And the VDI will already be out there. And, that's not more of AI, but certainly that is automation, and that is way and the stuff that does, help out end users, helps out, makes the experience a lot better. I mean, from my point of view, mobile device management, a similar tool like Intune has been a fantastic thing. Same thing with, because what'll happen is we can give someone a refreshed machine, or we can give them a new machine. They sign up
Mhm.
with their login. Suddenly the machine will get configured from Intune. Boom, their desktop will be there. Let's say they lose the machine, same sort of thing. Put in a new machine, basically, there's their machine right back, in a matter of minutes. And another, this is it's only going to get better and better over time the more we use it. But again, you still have to have human interaction. You still have to have a human being saying, okay, this has to be done, double check the work. You still have that there. I mean, I don't believe in 100% automation, because certainly you have to know what you want before you click before you click the button to tell it what to do. But certainly there are a lot of things that AI can do, and a lot of things that agent can do to make, managing and, IT easier. Another one as well, and is, for example, like Security Copilot. To me, that was a big thing when Microsoft announced that would be included with an E5 license for Microsoft 365.
Mhm.
Because before that, it was like, do I hire do I hire a CISO? Do I hire someone to review the logs, to take a look at security, things like that, which, you're doing manually. And you do have dashboards and stuff like that. But now you have an assistant, an agent that is monitoring and automating all these alerts and letting when it thinks things are going wrong. So it gives you information regarding it, so you can then either act on it or have it act on it, depending on what variable you set, or what that use case or what that workflow is going to be. And, I find that the more that Microsoft and other companies build this stuff into their products, the more people will end up using it. My biggest concern when it comes to automation, uh, and this is something that I was recently at the Microsoft AI tour in New York City, is
Mhm.
that it feels almost as though AI in a certain sense has been oversold, or missold, if you ask me. And the idea where it's saying AI can do anything out of the box, and it can't.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
that's people are like, well, what do you mean I have to ask a question? What do you mean I have to tell it what I want to do? Well, yeah, you do. Again, it's like an assistant. The other thing that I think also where it's been sort of missold in a little bit way is in the pricing model. One thing that people think is that everything's going to be included with it. And I think as people are finding out, no, it's not. And there are different pricing models for different versions of Copilot or different versions models of AI. And what people have certainly been running into, I would say, especially in the last 6 months, are items saying you're out of credits for the month. And then you can no longer use this agent. So it's like, yeah, but this is what I was paying for. Yeah, but you weren't paying for the credits in the back end. And I've actually talked with Microsoft about this, talked about with them about at the AI tour as well, where I feel that's one of those things where we need to get better as far as defining that, because the whole thing is, and it's not there yet, is the idea of being able to, and I'm sure AI will help with this at some point, is the idea of automating what the costs of things are going to be, or at least making it a consistent cost. Because right now it's difficult for end users to know, difficult for the paying customer to know what is going to be the cost of AI per month. You could put it as pay as you go, but it's difficult to estimate. Or as, and that's something that over time that's going to have to be figured out by the industry. Because one of the things I can tell you from working with accountants a lot is accountants like to know what they're going to be paying in advance, and they like to know what
Yeah.
what they're getting in advance. I always find give people the bad news first, you're going to be in much better case for going like, well, and it's difficult to give a client saying, hey, well, it's going to cost you, I don't know, use it for a few months and then we'll go from there. And then, so we'll see. I mean, certainly they do include Copilot consumption credits with Dynamic C enterprise licensing. They do include it with other types of licenses, but certainly it's something where I've emphasized to our salespeople and to others saying, make sure everyone knows what the hidden costs are, because that's where you can get in a lot of trouble. Because one thing that people hate more than anything else is, let's say you do get that perfect automation solution on it and you get everything working the way you want. And then suddenly middle way through the month, it tells you, oh, guess what? You can't use it till next month. What good is
Mm.
it at that point? So that's,
Yeah, exactly.
you know, so that's one of my concerns. So I know that was a long way around of answering a question because I like talking
Mm.
about this stuff, but this is
That's
just
good
sort of
stuff.
telling you telling you how I feel, where I think where things are.
Well, that's good stuff. So let's unpack that a little bit. I know you mentioned a lot of pros using Copilot, but give me some like cons or like anything that's under delivered. Was there like a failure mode you've actually seen within Copilot?
I haven't seen as much of a failure mode. I know one of the big things, and this is with AI, is the fact that frustrates people is the idea that you can ask AI the same question twice and get different answers.
Yeah.
And so I feel that that's a frustrating point that I think, and I don't think that's native necessarily to Copilot. I think that's native to any number
AI.
of the models out there. I mean, the
Right.
one thing I will say I do like about Copilot, just from a work point of view, is that it's more consistent from a work basis point of view, especially when you're using work. I like to talk about Copilot as being, you have work and you have internet, and you have a nice little split on a button between it when you look at the Copilot app. And I always point people, they don't communicate with each other at that point. You have work, which is secure over there. That's one of the big concerns. And then you have, internet, which is over there, or public, or whatever you want to call it, depending on the engine. The so security has been a big question about it, but again, once you show people how it's being used and you can give people a demonstration, go, okay, look, I'm going to have Copilot do this on my work. Oh, it's bringing me up emails. It's bringing me up Teams meetings. Give me summaries of this. Okay, Lena, let me click on the web one and try it. Oh, it's not bringing that up to me. So that's one of those great ways where you can demonstrate it's not being used. The other big thing that had come out recently, and I know there was uh, I mentioned this on GitHub recently, and if you've used Azure AI Foundry, is you are actually able to use other LLMs on it as well.
LLMs.
So one of
Good.
the big things that Microsoft announced a few weeks ago on GitHub is they're enabling Anthropic. So suddenly you have Claude, and there's other engines, and I know I have people internally that are waiting for Google's engine Gemini to show up in there, other parts of it. But certainly the ability to be able to play around with those different engines and not just going from Foundry, but then going into versions of Copilot where you might have more customization, saying if you have a different use case, because certainly different LLMs are better for different use cases. And one of the big things I know that I've had developers talk about to me about is, I like Copilot, but what I like using Copilot for sometimes is to query the best way to prompt another LLM. So that way I can get the
Yeah.
one, or vice versa. And so
Yeah.
most people I know that are using it in a development sense are using multiple LLMs because they're ones that are better for certain things and ones that are better for others. And that's the same sort of thing. Is it what the one other, I think that's the other thing as well, is that people think when they hear Copilot, they think when they hear Claude, they think when they hear Grok, they think it's just this one, you know, one thing, and it's not. They're all different. And it's like there's many versions of Copilot. There's many different little versions of other things like that, depending on the tools you're running it against. And so that's, that's one of the big things. I mean, the other big thing is people just they don't necessarily know how to use it unless you show them how to use it. I mean, they hear all these great things about it that it could do within teams, summarizing meetings or email summarizing or generating emails or generating, Word. But I think, we've gotten past the, ooh, look, let's show you all the cool stuff it can do. People want to see the use cases. And one of the things, you know, most I don't know most, but was it 100 million people watch the Super Bowl every year, and we see all these AI ads, and most of the AI ads were like about, ooh, scary AI coming for this or that, or throwing ads in or this. Then you had the Microsoft one, which didn't get a lot of notice because it was about the NFL Combine, and it was about, how you use an Excel document and what you can use Copilot in Excel. But it struck me that it was actually probably one of the best commercials from the point of view if you were looking for a use case. Because here it was saying, okay, well, I have an Excel document with all this information and I'm trying to analyze this player. Should I, sign this player? Should I not? Well, let's see what I can do with this information by using Copilot to analyze it. And I thought to myself, that's actually a use case. That's actually saying, okay, this is our problem. This is how we're going to solve it. This is the product we're going to use to solve it. And I thought that was a really good way to explain, obviously it's not the most entertaining. It's kind of a dry commercial, but it does come to the point about why you would use AI and how AI is being used on a practical sort of basis. Fact of the matter is most people I've had, use AI. The biggest thing that they have, the biggest issue they had, remember I was saying at the beginning of a conversation, going from DOS to Windows, it was like, what's the right way to use it? That's the big thing I've seen. Is almost sort of that intimidation factor. Is sort of like, what do I ask it? What do I say to it? And it's just like, just try asking to summarize a meeting. Just try asking to give you some notes for some upcoming meeting or for a meeting behind. One of the best things I say to people is, look, if you have Copilot in your environment and you join a meeting late, you can ask it to give you a quick summary so you can get caught up to date on that meeting. Now you can even have great video clips or even a podcast based on your meeting that you had. There's all sorts of things and all sorts of technology. You may not use 90% of it, but it's there if you want it, if you need it, if you want to use it. I mean, as an example, I've used it to help me draft PowerPoint presentations. I'm not a PowerPoint person. So it'll create this PowerPoint presentation in, let's say, 3 or 4 minutes. I'll then go through it, I'll make my change or whatever, and then I'll give it to a person I know is really good at PowerPoint, and that person will then completely revise it. And then as a double check, it'll say, okay, just double check my grammar, double check this thing through Copilot, and boom, we'll get that done very quickly. And that's one of the things that it's great at doing is it's really, in a certain sense, I think people use it as a high-powered grammar checker. Now, that being said, I've certainly seen abuse, and that's one thing. My sister, she's an academic, she's a professor, and she certainly has seen students that have tried to get around it, including one that apparently forgot to remove the prompts from, this wasn't from Copilot, I think it was from ChatGPT, in which it said this was generated by AI or whatever. And then, of course, it has, AI information may not be accurate, which again is the same sort of thing as well. So that's a bit of an issue. I mean, obviously, there's a downside as far as IP, intellectual property, and copyright. My nieces, both artists, anytime they see anything that looks remotely AI-like, they say, take that down because someone's not getting paid for it, and that's not a good thing. Certainly, in the entertainment industry, there's concern about it. I personally don't think have actors have anything really too much to worry about from AI, only because I've seen enough of these AI engines. I've seen enough what it does, and it seems to me and you look, it might get better and better at this, it may or may not, but it always seems to me to almost be the same thing over and over again. It doesn't have the nuance, it doesn't have the it could do certain things. You could, but there's just certain things that I think human beings are, let's face it, are better at. And frankly, I think by the end of the day, if you were gonna create a virtual actor, it would be more expensive than paying a real actor, and the results wouldn't be as good as you'd get by getting a real actor who's really good at their job. Same sort of thing with anything, yeah, you can use AI as a shortcut, but what I've noticed with shortcuts in my lifetime is that typically when you end up using a shortcut, it ends up taking you a lot longer than if you would just go through the process. I think that's also, again, the big question is AI is going to fix my problems. Well, it might, but just don't assume that by turning it on, it's going to fix your problems. Actually do the work. if you do the work, you'll spend a lot less time than just turning an AI and saying, just do this. And that's anything.
Now, let me ask you. So Q's entire or most of its business is built on the Microsoft stack, right? Dynamics, Azure, Copilot, Power Platform. Now, is advising a client to go all in on a single vendor a competitive advantage, or do you see it a security and resilience risk that doesn't get talked about enough?
I don't see it necessarily as a security or resilient risk. I mean, the fact of the matter is I've been very happy with the Microsoft stack, and I've been using it for years. I mean, I work
Mhm.
with AWS. I'm not saying it's better or worse. Same thing if you talk about like VMware or Hyper-V. I mean, the fact of the matter is it comes down to how you're going to use it.
Okay.
We have customers that use all different sorts of things. In fact, I could say I have a customer that uses Entra ID with AWS. It's a question of
Mhm.
what tools you need. From a security perspective, again, it's a question of how you secure it. I understand certainly there's a concern saying, oh, well, if you go with one or another from a data center point of view, well, shouldn't you have things, across AWS or across, Azure? And I get that. But I think at this point, we're in a stage in IT where we have enough redundancies with these different individual vendors, where if one of them was to go down for any length of time, we know there'd be a big issue no matter what. We've seen it with AWS certainly. I know there was a little bit of an outage with Azure after an update was
Yeah.
applied, and that stuff gets frustrating. But I think that's inherent
Mhm.
with any vendor. The fact of the matter is that even if you spread things out across different systems, you're still not going to make yourself immune from potential outages. Because if you're working with AWS and let's say Azure and one of them goes down, one of them's down. And that, at that sort of point of view. I mean, from my point of view with Azure, is it's sort of like same with AWS. You have multiple redundancy in regions. You have multiple redundancies in, across regions and globally. And again, this is a sort of thing where having a partner is a good idea because they could tell you, well, how far down that road should I go as far as redundancy and, that sort of thing. You still need backups. You still need to do all the
Mhm.
stuff that you always did in the past. Don't get me wrong, a lot more of it's automated, so you just have to see, you just have to check, the dashboard to make sure it worked like you always had to. But if you don't check the dashboard and you're relying on someone else or even AI to check it for you, you don't check it for months and something happens, you're still gonna be susceptible to getting hacked. You still have to read the dashboard, you still have to do the work, you still have to, look at
Yeah.
these things like that. I mean, AI can help you with a lot, but again, it can't do everything. It needs that human part to it. And that's, I don't think that's a bad thing. And again, I mean, I understand the, saying it's like, I mean, it's like the whole idea, like having two ISPs, going into your building, so that way if one goes down, the other one stays up. But then again, the question is, what if all the power goes out? They're both going to be down. I mean,
Right.
I'll put another way to use. So after Sandy, what was it about? Oh, well, 12 years ago or so, we were completely up. I mean, everything was up, from a point of view, emails, network, all that stuff was up in the cloud. It was all great. The problem and this is, the whole thing about disaster recovery that people don't talk about necessarily or continuity planning is a number of people couldn't get to stable power. They were stuck in certain places. They couldn't get a car to get out. Their houses were flooded. They had to be evacuated. They had to find a place to plug in. And that was the question. Well, where's that place to plug in if there's a natural disaster or something like that? Yeah, your systems will be up. I'll say that in most cases, your systems are going to be up, but there's a natural disaster. But the question is, how do your people get into them? How do your people how can they access them, if they don't have power? And, there are things like that are things you learn over time where the bigger issue isn't necessarily the technology in the data center, it's the technology outside the data center. So if the data center is secure, that's great. But if you can't get to the data or get to the data center because you don't have power, that's a bigger thing. And so when sometimes people ask me about AI, I'll say one of my bigger concerns is the grid. If the grid hasn't been upgraded and the grid can't handle it, and we have more power outages, doesn't make
Yeah.
how does that help people if they can't, do their work, if their
Mhm.
power's out but the data center's on. So that concerns me more than saying picking, let's say AWS over Azure over something else or using all those together.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not someone who's going to tell a customer not to use Rackspace, not to use AWS because I'm a Microsoft partner. I will work with whatever they want to work with. That's the fact of the matter is that I consider myself to be very agnostic. Yes, I'm a Microsoft partner. Yes, I sell Microsoft, but I also understand there are people out there that may not want to use Microsoft. It's
Yeah.
this sort of way where, we were talking at the beginning, are you on a Mac or are you on a Windows PC? It's, we have people that work on Macs, just the way it is, it's,
Mhm.
and some people I know prefer to work on a Mac just from the fact that they feel the virtualization is better on it, so again, I'm not going to be someone who's going to say, you know, and the great thing about automation, let's just talk about sort of like Intune or something like that, is you can manage all those different types of machines. And that's the thing is that you can still have centralized, management. So that's not a bad thing to me. So again, I don't think, being a Microsoft partner saying like, oh, you're sort of, you're sort of, nailing yourself to one provider and you're sort of stuck in that situation. You have to always be interested in other things. Same sort of thing with like when I talk about Azure AI Foundry, right? You're not gonna necessarily going to, live and die on a single LLM. You can use whatever you need, whatever the best model for what you're gonna
Yeah.
do. And that's the way I look at it there. Yes, we're a Microsoft partner. Yes, we prefer to use Microsoft. Yes, we will sell you Microsoft, but certainly we're more than happy to work with other products as it were. And I don't see it as being putting us necessarily at a disadvantage though.
Okay. Now you mentioned in the beginning, right? You host your own podcast. When in doubt, reboot, right?
Correct.
You've talked a lot. Um, you've talked to a lot of enterprise leaders. What's the one question you're not getting asked enough? That you think should be keeping up CTOs at night, and keeping up CTOs up at night.
It's a good
Is there
question.
one question?
I
Yeah.
don't know if there's necessarily one question. Certainly, I will say from being a global CTO, I will say the one question is making sure your people are getting enough rest. Something that people
Mm.
don't actually think about as well. I think we have a lot of the technology questions answered. Certainly, better user education always. I mean, look, spamming or phishing or stuff like that, that's always gonna be a problem. User education's a big thing. The other big thing is, and the reason why I say is make sure your people get their rest and make sure people are getting their 8 hours every night. And the reason why it seems like kind of an odd thing to say, "Well, why are you that concerned about people?" But the fact of the matter is more of those errors take place when people are tired. So make sure the number one thing you wanna take care of is your people. Number 1, check in on your people. Number 2, get your people education. Uh, Always get people training, I mean, that's the big thing is when it comes to Copilot or any AI thing, give your end users some training, give them some things that they can learn how to use prompts. One of my favorite things that Microsoft had at the AI tour was they gave out a deck of cards. And on that deck of cards, standard 52 set of cards, but in each card, they had a different prompt you could try in Copilot or any AI engine you like. But
Yeah.
but again, that's just like a little education, something for people to try. So I would think education, making sure your people are well looked after, making sure health is looked after as well. These are things where, I mean, I've seen situations where people have done well under stress. I've seen situations where people have done terribly under stress. Uh,
Mm.
if the one consistent thing is that people that tend to do well are the ones that get the rest they need, and they get the education and the continual training they need. The fact of the matter is when you're working in IT or working with computers in general, the fact of the matter is technology changes rapidly. Let's just face it.
Yep.
We're in a
Yes.
situation where we're working with tools that are, maybe the age of a toddler at this point, and it's rapidly changing. So the more you can give your end users and more you can give your technology staff education, how it works, how it can help you, how it can, help you sleep better at night. I guess just from a point of view saying, oh, this is my assistant at night when maybe I'm, maybe I'm, up because a lot of small, medium businesses, you're talking about a one person IT shop. So you gotta keep the training levels, you gotta keep the energy levels up. Because if you don't have that, that's when mistakes happen. So I mean, I know it's counterintuitive because you think about again, technology solving every problem. But the fact of the matter is most problems are people problems, not technology problems.
Very good. Very good. Here's a hard one. After 27 years, what's the one thing you tell your 1998 self to do differently?
Let's see. Get a life. No.
Touche.
No, I'm actually very no, actually, I'm very happy with my life. I'm not, no, I got good things going on. Or maybe tell my 1998 self to maybe, not take things so, seriously or not get, too stressed out over everything. Not to sweat the details, you know? Remember that you have lots of other people that you can work with. Don't think you and the biggest one is don't think you can do it all yourself. I mean, I know it's a
Yeah.
trite expression to say it takes a village, but it really does. I mean, you know, we're
Mhm.
only as good as the people we work with, and again, that's another thing that's why I've been with Q so long, is I got great people to work with. If I have something that maybe I don't know, I know I can go to this person, I can go to that person.
Yeah.
Always ask questions. Don't be scared of asking questions. Sometimes you get intimidated, but always ask questions. Yes, sometimes it sounds stupid, sometimes it sounds this way, but don't worry about it. I'm the guy in the first 3 rows, the person first 2 rows of the classroom that asks questions, that'll pester the professor or the teacher with questions. You know, I mean, look, I mean, that's what you have to do, you know? Uh, do demos if you're gonna train people as well. I'm gonna say I'm not a big fan of going off of PowerPoints. I tend to when I do my presentations, you can tell I tend to talk a lot about this stuff. I like to, you know, they say people say I take the risk of showing demos because sometimes they don't work. It's just the way technology is. But again, some people told me, well, that's not the worst thing in the world because it tells you, hey, you know what? If you as a technologist has been doing this for almost 30 years, has runs into this issue, what a, you know, it means that someone else can run into this issue. And then you see how you sort of see how sort of the mind of how you troubleshoot, how you get around it, and how you work through things, you know. And that's the whole thing is that I guess the final thing I guess is always remember, work the problem. Don't let it work you. If you work
Mm.
the problem, you'll be successful. If you let the problem work you, it's gonna be an issue. Don't try to, you know, place blame for an issue first. Fix the issue first. Do the autopsy after. You know, that's another thing as well, is it's sort of just like if you try to do both at once, it's gonna take you longer to solve the problem. When you're in a business solve problems, you have to work the problem, and that's the way it comes down to.
So what's next for Q Associates, and what are you personally excited to build or explore in the next 12 months?
I'm personally excited to see the advancements in AI. New things coming at Copilot, just Foundry in general. I mean, I'm going to the MVP summit in late March. I'm looking forward to seeing announcements that I can't talk about because we have NDAs. But I'm also looking forward to stuff that we can't talk about that have already been published. You know, that are already out there.
Mm.
And the fact of the matter is like a year and a year in terms of AI is, I don't know, maybe let's kind of say 7, 8 years in terms of anything else. So
Mhm.
it's
It's
a
true.
lot of
Yeah.
cool stuff coming out. I'm looking forward to a lot of automation things coming out. I'm looking forward to you know working with my team to get you know, our customers more automated, our internal some of our internal resources more automated, and just sort of things that we can just do, very simple things that we can do with Copilot or just agents in general. And I think one of the things I was talking with someone earlier is that there's things we can't even anticipate that are coming that should be really cool that'll help us out. And you know, I'm looking forward to the future. I can't necessarily say understand anything specific. I mean, automation's a big part of it, but certainly there are some things that you know, looking forward to the to solving the next unknown or to seeing the next unknown and then to you know, seeing what we can do with it. That's, you know, that's what this all is about. I mean, I told a number of people I went to Atari Computer Camp when I was 11 years old. So I found the future interesting then, and I still find the future interesting now. And certainly,
Mm.
I could tell you in back in like was it in the early 1980s when I was there, I couldn't predict a lot of the stuff that we've seen. I mean, some of it maybe, but you know, it's always different. The future is always different than what we think it's going to be. So I just look forward to seeing it, and I look forward to taking on the challenges as they come.
Where can people follow your work, listen to your podcast, or reach out?
My podcast can be found on Spotify or the Q Associates website. If you just do it on Spotify, you can go to When in Doubt Reboot. Just look it up. You'll see a picture of myself and my co-host Mairead O'Donovan. If you want to look me up on LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn and more than happy to chat or answer any questions with any number of people. I really enjoy conversations such as these. I'm always looking for people to be on the podcast. I'd like to talk about AI and other parts of the computer industry or just the industry in general. And yeah, I mean, you know, I'm always open to answering questions and helping. And that's one of the things I like about my job is I get to help people out on a daily basis.
All right, this has been a real conversation. 27 years of scar tissue has a way of cutting through the noise. I appreciate you bringing it. To our audience, if today's episode made you think differently about AI in the enterprise actually means, or it made you nervous about your Copilot deployment in ways you weren't before, that's the point. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. I'm Will. This is Automated Die Trying, where the future is being built in real time. And if the people building it don't have time for theory, subscribe, share, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you. Thank you, Art.
Thank you, Bill.